Hello, and welcome back to Coin Lady channel. It's not often that a famous billionaire investor engages with the XRP community to help disseminate our message against SEC folly and overreach, but that's exactly what happened today. Today, though, is not one of those days. Mark Cuban, star of the hit ABC show Shark Tank, retweeted something from an active member of the XRP community earlier today. And more than 1 million people have watched it already. The scope is mind-boggling in its impressiveness. You sort of anticipate this, given that Mark Cuban is followed by at least 8.8 million people. Wow, however. I will thus relate to you the precise words that were spoken. Moreover, he is spot on with this analysis. As an additional piece of evidence, the Crypto Basic published a story headlined "Pro-XRP Lawyer Wants Billionaire Investor Mark Cuban to Testify Before Congress." That's a reference to conversations from the day before. Therefore, I shall discuss everything. But Mark Cuban has been communicating apart from this, and I already talked about it in a video, so I won't repeat myself here. But after some back and forth, Mark Cuban and John Deaton appear to be on the same page. At the time I was checking, somewhere around 2.7 million people had viewed that message. In other words, and this is fantastic, the XRP community's message is being broadcast in a massive fashion. And it appears that Mark Cuban agrees with us. Everything I've read by him on the subject seems to bear this out. Yes. But I do want to clarify something before we go any further. I come from no financial or legal background. Nothing I say or write should be taken as recommendations to purchase or sell any particular security. I'm just a fan who occasionally posts videos to YouTube discussing random crypto-related things for kicks. Now, if you're wondering why Mark Cuban may give a hoot about crypto and the SEC wanting to destroy everything, here are some reasons. See, this headline is almost 10 years old, from October 17, 2013. It was published by Business Insider. This is why the SEC's major case against Mark Cuban failed. That's exactly right. Mark Cuban was sued by the SEC. Mark Cuban might have forked over around $2 million in fees if the false charges of insider trading had been proven. That, as the piece notes, is the most likely outcome. I've heard that figure cited in more than one place, and although I think it's admirable that he fought to defend his reputation, I also think it's likely that he fought to preserve his name intact. It is reported that he paid almost $16 million to settle the lawsuit, although he ultimately prevailed. His reputation will remain intact. So, $2 million versus $16 million. However, when compared to possessing nearly $1 billion, I suppose it's just a minor detail. Maybe it's not a huge issue after all. However, check out this piece from 2013. After less than 5 hours of deliberation, a jury found billionaire Mark Cuban not guilty of insider trading, a conclusion that reflected poorly on the SEC for bringing the case. Owner of the Dallas Mavericks and alleged stock dumper Mark Cuban is accused of selling out of a metasearch internet company named Mama.com in 2004 after learning of an offering that would have reduced his stake in the firm. It goes on to say that if he hadn't made the decision to sell, he would have lost around $750,000. However, nobody kept this information hidden. That much was already common knowledge. Therefore, I won't be too technical there. Please allow me to raise this issue. He probably hates the SEC just as much as the rest of us, which is why he cares. That's what I'm assuming, at least. Look, the SEC doesn't always win, and that's something I wanted to mention. They've been making false claims of all sorts about him. And now the same nonsense is being spread about Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, and Chris Larson. And it's bad news for every XRP owner on the planet. Now, the XRP lawyer and crypto novice who has written this post. That seems like a lot of repetition. I appreciate it, you grade schoolers. This was just too much amusement for John Deaton. John Deaton has requested that American investor and billionaire Mark Cuban appear before the Senate and House Banking and Financial Services Committees. When asked on Twitter if he could bring Mark Cuban before the Senate and House Banking and Financial Services Committee, Attorney Deaton recently tweeted, "Please." Quote ends. Deaton told Cuban he was sorry for being too forward in offering to meet with the billionaire investor. Deaton, though, thinks Cuban would be a good witness before the congressional committee because of his knowledge of how regulations affect creative processes. As a response to the heated discussion between the wealthy investor and former SEC officer John Reed Stark, Deaton made the remark. John Reed Stark, the ex-attorney for the Securities and Exchange Commission, is a jerk. In my opinion, he is not making his points in good faith. It's more along the lines of, here's what I hope the result will be. And I'll argue whatever it is I have to argue to win. It's just that I've made note of these things repeatedly. It seems unlikely to me that he is acting honestly and is willing to accept any explanation for his actions. Was the case, but not for every lawyer who has worked for the SEC in the past. I've been drawing attention to recent writings by attorney Mark Vogel, and while I strongly disagree with many of his positions, it appears that he is making an honest effort. To be honest, I get the impression that he is. Oh, my God, this John Reed Stark. Mark Cuban, like the rest of our community, was discussing John Reed Stark. You and John Reed Stark, if you use Twitter. The point is, though, that on sometimes, he will argue. But even if you're being polite, he'll still arbitrarily block you on Twitter. If he doesn't, he'll probably be a little miffed about it. If he disagrees with your arguments, even if you're being cordial, he'll simply block you. He even blocked a lawyer from the XRP community named Bill Morgan. It's a bunch of hogwash. Regardless, peace keeps going. It was just this week that Cuban and Stark had their heated argument. A Cuban national has recently claimed that SEC Chairman Gary Gensler is hurting the crypto industry with his strict restrictions. During the heated discussion, Stark was present to support the regulator. Cuban has speculated that the cryptocurrency sector could go the way of the early internet, when 99% of startups failed. Cuban claims that 90% of blockchain-related businesses and 99% of cryptocurrency assets will fail. Cuban observed that the technological landscape favors those who are willing to change the rules of the game. And I think we can all agree that's an important idea. It's rare to find someone who doesn't think that most crypto in circulation today is worthless. Here, however, is a quotation. Let's go back to the SEC with this. They're not supposed to quote judge whether or not a technology is legitimate or whether or not investors require safeguards based on that assessment. 100% accurate. The Cuban, Mr. Look at this in front of you right now. Mr. Huber, a member of the XRP community, recently tweeted the following. This happened yesterday, by the way. And he wrote some stuff down. This is a screenshot. If you wish to take a look, you can see it. You need not be a securities lawyer, he penned. The current head of the Securities and Exchange Commission must be a Harvard graduate or a devoted alum to know how ridiculous this is. And he offered up this saying. It's from a TechCrunch story, and it says the following. Mark Cuban retweeted it a few hours ago, and it's been seen by millions of people by now. So, someone in the XRP community is sharing the news and the ridiculousness of what's going on with the SEC. Check out this underlined section. According to the TechCrunch story, this was brought to light by Stephen Huber. Clayton used theater tickets as an illustration. He defined a security as the purchase of 1,000 tickets at $10 each with the intention of reselling them for $100 or $1,000. A ticket is just a ticket, even if you buy it 10 years from now. Quote ends. Do you realize how ridiculous that sounds? In fact, allow me to raise an issue. A few days ago, I caught an hour and a half of John Deaton's live stream on his Crypto Law channel. He brought on Jeremy Hogan, a lawyer. Lawyer Mark Vogel was on his side. And then, I'm sorry I don't recall the name of the lawyer, but he or she represented Rosalind Layton, who covered the SEC v. Ripple case for Forbes for a few years. One of the things that really stuck out to me was something I already knew very well, but was reminded of very usefully. Attorney Deaton noted that Gary Gensler and other SEC folks are quick to say, well, look at all this speculation, all this wild speculation here, and you know that people are going to be speculating on this, of course you should be registering it. When asked about allegations concerning cryptocurrencies and why there should have been registration or this or that. There is also the worry that if anything has value in and of itself, it should be documented. Then, lawyer Deaton reiterated that this was not a component of the Howey test. It just is not the case. Therefore, the argument that this is all a bunch of nonsense, because people are speculating about something that wasn't decided in the 1946 Howey case, is absurd. Yes, the whole system must be considered, but not in the way that Jay Clayton, the ex-chair of the SEC, is phrasing it. And it's ridiculous, even if it were a law. So, Attorney Deaton shared my upcoming Mark Cuban tweet with his followers. But I'll show you what Attorney Deaton wrote in rebuttal to what Mark Cuban claimed. You can tell exactly how these regulators think since they hit every single target. Consider a hammer as an example. Everything is a hammer in its eyes. According to Clayton's research of Broadway tickets, any collectibles with resale value, even Pokemon cards like Pokemon Yeezys and Taylor Swift tickets, must be registered with the SEC. And he has a facepalm emoji on his phone. You got that correct. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, requires registration from anybody selling a product or service with the intent to make a profit. Does this make sense now? That's exactly what I'm trying to communicate. Here we have a former chair of the SEC who is embarrassingly wrong on legal matters. Here, I'll introduce you to Mark. Over 1 million people have viewed a tweet that Mark Cuban posted just a few hours ago. And as you can see, he retweeted Stephen Huber, which I thought was quite amazing because it publicized the reunion. So, he is in the know and telling millions upon millions of others about it. This is not the first time he has done this either. Just seeing this makes me happy. And now, the words of Mark Cuban. In explaining why the SEC needs to amend its rules for the registration of digital assets like cryptocurrency, former SEC head Jay Clayton unwittingly threw the agency under the bus. This is what he had to say. Quote, so, what might be the root of that change? Value in use now against value in use later. Clayton used theater tickets as an illustration. It would be considered a security if someone bought 1,000 tickets for $10 and informed their friends and relatives they could resell them for $100 or $1,000. But he countered that it's simply a ticket if you buy it 10 years later. In what way is the SEC being thrown under the bus by this? He has faith in the tickets as collateral because of this. The person doing the purchasing and selling must register with the SEC. You consider this. What would it be like to attend the Southeastern Conference? Listening to Clayton, I feel a strong want to make a sale of it. He's been offered to the buyer. Where do we file our SEC paperwork? To put it simply, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to the extreme. Cuban continues, so if this is some enterprising college kid who bought the tickets and was trying to resell them to friends, they are breaking the law and risk an SEC enforcement action if they don't go to the SEC and learn securities laws and figure out how to determine if they are eligible for an exemption from registration or hire a securities attorney to have them figure out the securities laws and file all the paperwork, which would certainly cost them more than the face value of the tickets. Naturally, the play would be over by the time they received the necessary clearances from the SEC. This is where Gary Gensler's knowledge of crypto and small businesses and startups falls short. While for some enormous corporations the issue may be one of regulatory arbitrage, the vast majority of crypto firms today had humble beginnings. That group shrank by 99%. Such as a legal entity formation and a tax identification number. And so on. They don't object to getting an SEC registration number. In fact, I suspect the vast majority of them would jump at the chance to become SEC registered. Intent is not the problem here. The problem is that there are no simple standards for new crypto businesses to follow. Someone on my team contacted the SEC to inquire about token registration. Where may we locate some sort of manual? They were extremely cordial and helpful by providing us with numerous case studies to peruse. Now, consider this. When you contact the SEC, they will tell you where to register. Access to the site ought to be possible. That's what Gary Gensler has been saying all over the country, on countless news programs. Do you mean you're going to the DMV right now? It's available on our site. Now, picture yourself there. Oh well, I simply need to fill out some paperwork and register. And then the SEC official adds something like, you should probably study this case law. Just hand over the documentation. You little punk-ass bitch, damn it. To what location does this belong? Where can I sign up? Anyway, that brings us to the topic of Cuban rights. They were cordial and helpful, pointing us to a number of cases we may look into before advising us to consult a securities attorney. A quick sign-up form, if you will. The tens of thousands of dollars in legal expenses, most of which are produced from the obligatory back and forth with the SEC, and the months-long wait while they go through the process are very, very difficult for startups. This fact never occurred to Jay Clayton or Gary Gensler. Even the smallest Etsy artist can get all the other licenses she needs, from incorporation to payroll, in a short amount of time and at a low cost. If the SEC is serious about protecting investors, it should make registering with them simple and inexpensive. This way, everyone will register and you'll have access to everything you need to safeguard more people's money. Why can't the SEC make it easier for new corporations to get set up if the states can, and the IRS can? Not cryptographic in nature, this. This is a problem with SEC regulations. Okay. It's easy for me to agree with just about everything you said. The larger argument, which he didn't exactly make, but which we know to be true and which he might agree with, is that the SEC is doing this deliberately to kill crypto because you can see it with this administration from the top down, from the White House on down. They're basically smashing everything in sight. Not just the SEC is involved. This is a focused effort. The SEC has now reached a new low in this regard. But certainly, it's a thing with the administration, so they have no need to do what Cuban is suggesting, they just want it gone. They want to see it torn down, if not completely destroyed, so that their current allies can take over. I agree with attorney John Deaton's viewpoint, which he has been discussing for years. The future has no guarantees. When you consider that BlackRock is investing, it makes sense. I've been discussing this topic for the past few days. This is utter nonsense. This is completely absurd. I do think it's quite neat, though. If you're as interested in this as I am, I'll stop talking now. Sorry, but I'm not a certified financial planner. Nothing I say or write should be used as a basis for making financial decisions. Please like and subscribe my channel. See you in the next one, bye.